So Jarl, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? It was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, and the podcast is now live. So if anybody wants to go onto the B4 website, click on to the media session and the podcast there. You've got a chat with Jarl and I about how Owen Mumford have fared in the last 2 or 3 months. But the nub of what you were saying to me, Jarl, is it's been ridiculously busy time for you. You've had to not only manage a team of 700 doing what you normally do, but all the extra pressures that come on top of that with helping the effort towards finding a vaccine. So maybe just give us a little bit of background as to how life has been for you and the team over the past 2 or 3 months.
Absolutely. At Owen Mumford, we make medical devices, and we've been very involved with our existing customers, supplying normal medical devices in the normal course of business. And that hasn't stopped. But in addition to that, there's been all sorts of calls on our skills and our technology to support the extraordinary effort on COVID-19. So, for example, the antibody tests a lot of people are talking about at the moment. We've been involved with a lot of laboratories around the world who are looking for blood sampling devices to support their blood sampling kits for antibody tests for COVID-19. And here we've been supplying literally millions of devices over and above what we would normally make. And of course, with the Nightingale hospitals, we supplied over 10 million blood sampling safety lancets to fill up the Nightingale hospitals, which fortunately, ultimately, proved to be redundant to a great extent, which is fantastic news in its own right. So if anybody wants any safety lancets, I'm sure there's a few to spare. In addition to that, we also been looking at the vaccine. I mean, we're very lucky that we seem to be in the middle of the hub here in Oxfordshire of a lot of activity, a lot of technology, a lot of skills coming together to create all sorts of solutions for the greater good. And we have made a proposal to the powers that be that one should consider, once the vaccine is available, to introduce a self-administration of the vaccine. Now, that is quite a unique thought process, and one that we are sharing at the moment with the government and various other bodies. But the idea, like with insulin, is quite proven already to actually inject yourself at home. It's not an unusual thought process, but to do it on a multi-million scale, nationwide and perhaps internationally, would really reduce the pressure on the healthcare system. And of course, rapidly expand the vaccination of the population at large. So that's the latest program that we're working on with various individuals, and quite exciting to see what we can come up with there, if it's practical.
Just reference the 10 million units that you had to manufacture. What sort of time period does that take?
Well, in this case, over and above our normal business, it took us about 3 weeks to fulfill, partially because we had some in stock, and partially we were able to turn up our machines to 11, and that really helped. I mean, I've just been listening to Mark Beard on one of the other forums, and it's marvelous to hear how his business has fared during this period. But also, as he pointed out, that generally in business, people have sort of individuals have raised themselves to meet the expectations generally in society that we all do our bit. And within our company, all our associates really have done more than their bit to make sure that we haven't missed a beat in increasing output, increasing our efficiency for a period of time. Some things can't be sustained for a long period of time because of extraordinary effort, but the will has been there, the effort's been there, and the results may speak for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that came through loud and clear when we spoke before about how the team have really dug deep and given you every ounce of sweat that they've got to help you get through this period. And one question I put to you, I'm fascinated about how large businesses like yours have turned on a sixpence, really. And I asked you the question on the podcast, had you been told, you've got 5 years to plan for this, how long would you need to plan for something that took you a matter of weeks? And I think you said something like 6 months to 9 months, or maybe even a year, to do what you actually managed to do in a space of 3 weeks. So it's phenomenal what an organisation can do under pressure.
And I think that's repeated throughout industry at large. I think we all caught ourselves doing things we didn't think were possible. The whole working from home has been a bit of a something I haven't supported in the past, to be quite frank about it. And these last 3 months have totally U-turned my thought process along those lines. I think that's huge opportunity for mixing the home working with site working in a much more positive way than I ever thought possible. And as I say, the productivity and the output and the speed with which people willingly are able to achieve things has really lit up a lot of corners in the business that contribute in a way that perhaps hasn't been encouraged to contribute in the past.
We touched on homeworking when we spoke before, and I've always known you to be predominantly out of the country, and for you as a person to spend so much time here confined to barracks, it's a bit of a shock to the system.
Yes, no, I never thought I'd get a tan in England, but hey, it seems to.
No, but I mean, joking aside, it's been quite a change in the way you work, obviously, or the way that all of us work. Yeah. But international travel in the future, I'm sure you'll be changing a lot of the way you've done things in the past going forward. You'll have to.
I think two things are going to happen here. There's going to be some very real tangible cost savings by not traveling as much as we have done, because we've proven and we have introduced ways of working that doesn't require the travel. Zoom, team meetings, all of these vehicles for communication. They were a little bit on the edge for most of our organization. Now, every one of us is using it, and it's second nature, and that really is opening up our eyes. I know that I can see that Dominic asked, as an international company, what sort of challenges have we faced? Well, the fact of the matter is, not seeing the customer face to face is one of the challenges we thought we would face. But in fact, the customers themselves are adopting this new way of doing business at a distance and through a TV monitor. And I'm quite happy about it, because travel is cut down, so timing, there's more opportunity cost gained. Time spent in an airplane is now spent working. So we're all doing more by not traveling. And actually, commitments and especially with videos, the big element of body language does come across almost as well as if you're sitting in the room with somebody. Slightly different when the video's off. Then it's just a phone call. But like we are now, you buy into the conversation. You can judge the reactions to your comments and so on. So I think it is going to change quite a bit. But of course, also the carbon footprint is the unintended positive upside of all this. Mm-hmm. As a community, we have a green agenda that we are pushing very hard. And this is going to have a significant upside if we can change the way we're working compared with our travel habits of the past.
We've got a question from Dad, from Colin. I know you're a huge supplier of diabetes tests. Is the antibody testing similar or more complex?
It's different. With measuring glucose in the blood, you need to get a blood sample, put it on a strip, meter, and that's quite a sophisticated little machine to measure how much glucose is in your blood, and it tells you how much insulin you need or when you need insulin. With the antibody tests, it's a more of a binary result, because you're checking to see, have you got antibodies or have you not? So it's sort of black and white. It's like a pregnancy test. So you put you can get the blood and you put it on a little test strip, and it crosses a little line that either shows up as positive or negative. So it's a much simpler technology in that you simply got to apply the blood to the strip and see whether it reacts. With diabetes, you actually have to measure how much glucose. In other words, it's not binary. It's also how much glucose is in your blood.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. You talked about how you're saving time, not having to travel, a significant amount of cost as well. Obviously, I mean, as Dom referred to earlier today, the work that you're doing in the community is well involved with the hub that we talked about when we spoke before, and other community work that you're doing. Can maybe just give us a bit of an insight into that locally, and obviously you're doing some community work further afield as well, and how you see that path sort of or that area growing for you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, to refer back to Mark Beard's excellent presentation earlier in the day, he talked about the Beard Foundation. We haven't set up a foundation, but do similar work where we contribute to local charities and get engaged with local charities. But just to set the scene, a few years ago, we launched our 2025 vision. 2025 vision was basically saying, for the next decade, how are we going to succeed and why will we succeed? And we concluded very simply that we need to make a positive difference, A, to deserve to succeed, and B, to actually persuade others to allow us to succeed. So to make a positive difference, we have 4 stakeholders. We have our customers, our distributors, wholesalers, importers. So our customers is one of our key stakeholders. We have our users, people actually physically use our devices, patients in hospitals and at home. We have our associates, that's what we call our staff. And fourthly, our environment. So we have very much those 4 stakeholders at the core of all that we do to satisfy ourselves that are we making a positive difference to our customers, to our users, to our staff, and to our environment in what we decide to do as a strategy. And here, when you talk about associates and our environment, contribute to their welfare, their well-being, and not least the mental well-being is a very important part of the responsibility for a larger employer. Not only do we have first aiders, we also have mental health first aiders. And that is actually quite a new concept in our company anyway, where people actually have recognized first aid qualified people to talk about pressures of work, pressures at home, and your mental state of well-being. So those sort of things are really a core part of how we are now managing our most precious resource, which is our staff. And then engaging with local charities and getting our staff involved in local charities is also a win-win. It shows that we as an employer care and we're willing to support and able to support, but equally our associates see that we engage and we support our associates when they engage in individual pursuits. And that creates a really motivated group of people around us. And for that, we've had a lot of good feedback. In the most recent COVID-19 situation, we've had in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, which is in America where our offices are in the US, Georgia was the second worst hit state for a while after New York. And we, after 27 years of being based in Georgia, felt it was the right time for us to contribute to the state governor's emergency relief fund and donated 500,000 safety lancets towards their Medicare program. And that was a very important statement to make, both as a company, but also on behalf of the employees who all were touched by this terrible situation we're in. So things like that, it's not just a profit and loss hit. It's actually it's a humankind balance sheet upside. It's where people actually appreciate being part of somebody and something that it's not just about figures and statistics.
Brilliant, fantastic. And how are you doing? Obviously, for you running a huge organisation, maintaining a full staff roster is difficult at any time. But particularly now, are you finding it challenging, or have you got opportunities for people to work with you?
Well, we at the very beginning of this situation, we categorized our people into 3 groups: Group A, Group B, and Group C. And we did that so we immediately knew how to handle people in different ways, because our Group C people, like our sales reps, are able to work away from home, away from the site, away from the office 100% of the time. Our Group B workers could work from home, but would need periodic access to site. And Group A workers could only work on site. And what it meant was we actually had to adapt to a new style of management. It's a lot easier to manage people when you can see them, or you can hear them, or sometimes when you can't hear or see them, in which case you manage in a different way. But to manage people from home is a totally different skill set and discipline. And we had to quickly adapt and adopt ways of working that would give people clear direction and purpose, as well as making sure that we got output and results off the back of our expectations when they were out of sight, but definitely not out of mind. Couple that with people who are on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week throughout the year. We have to manage the fact that we didn't want to create a them and us. And that was one of the big challenges we had. The people on site who can only do the job on site would consider the ones working from home as being lucky. The ones working from home were feeling unloved and unseen, and really want to make sure that people knew what they were doing and that they were doing a good job or are doing a good job. So making sure we were bridging that two-part community is actually what's taken up a lot of my time as leader of the company over the last few months, having very clear, consistent, and apathetic, understanding communication, taking into consideration those two very distinct groups and their expectations, from the company, but also of themselves in their daily lives and during these very weird circumstances.
We've got another question from Dom. In practice, does all this staff care apply equally in different cultures, i.e. your offshore manufacturing bases?
Yeah, very much so. So we have the same value system throughout the company. How it's executed locally can be interpreted. I mean, there's certain things that we find important here that are not so important in Malaysia or in America or Germany. One of the big bones of contention is holidays. In the US, they start on 5 days. In the UK, we start on 25 days. And in Germany, we start on 30 days. And in Malaysia, we have over 33 days. But their bank holidays are part of their basic holiday system. So it's all very different from different countries, and expectations are very different. In America, you have personal days on top of your holidays, which is a concept we don't have here. So those personal days can be taken as sick days. And if you don't have any sick days, you can just take them. So it's a very different system. So when you want to improve benefits, for example, and introduce and roll out a new benefit in the company, you do have to recognize that the borders are relevant. So tangible benefits are country by country, but values remain constant. So when we say we have our 4 key stakeholders for our 2025 vision, those are constant, whether it's Malaysia or France or Atlanta, Georgia, or indeed Woodstock. And making sure that our voice and our communication and our style is consistent has been very important in that sense. And I think being a private company, 70-year-old private company, we're the 2 same shareholders today as it was in 1952. It may be second generation, but it's the Owens and the Mumfords, creates a huge stability and not a little pride in being part of a good old British company with a value system that people can relate to and feel proud to work for, I hope.